Welcome to this short foray into the world of networking. In the space of the next few minutes, 10, 15 minutes, I hope to share with you my 10 top tips for building a vibrant, collaborative network that will support you in your work, in your professional life, but also in your personal life. So just bear with me. I'm going to share my screen. 10 top tips, as I said. Do's and don'ts, some ideas, hopefully give you some food for thought. And just a couple of words of background about myself. I run a company called Management Advantage. We specialize in communication skills, and within that, our speciality is networking skills. I'm the co-author of a book with Tony Newton called The Networking Effect, and I've been to business school, worked in publishing and branding, and so forth. But it's the networking that's really my reason for being here today. First, tip number one, make time for networking. Realize how important it is, how valuable it is, how much it can add to your life, and how much easier it can make your life, I suppose. We all, of course, agree that technical know-how is important. You have to have the qualifications to get a job. But what often makes the difference between this applicant and that applicant is those soft skills, those interpersonal skills. They make you stand out, they help you to stand out from the crowd. And of course, networking is paramount among those. A quote from an academic, Rob Cross at the University of Virginia: what really distinguishes high performers from the rest of the pack is their ability to maintain and leverage personal networks. The most effective high performers create and tap large, diversified networks that are rich in experience and span organizational boundaries. It's not just for the juniors looking for their first job, it's for all of us at whatever level, whatever stage we are in our careers. Tip two, understand that the world really is a global village and that we are so much more connected to each other than we realize. And we can make contact with people much easier, as I said, than we might expect. Let me try to explain how this might be. If I took a piece of paper and I folded it in half 50 times, and I can't actually do that, the paper won't let me, but if I could, doubling the thickness each time, I wonder if you have any ideas about how thick it might be. Usually people will make gestures like this. Excuse me. Or, like there's a meter or two. The truth is really quite astonishing. If you fold a piece of paper in half 50 times, it will be 93 million miles thick. Now, I've done that on a spreadsheet. I checked it out on a spreadsheet because I didn't believe it either. But if you think about it, if 50 times will get you from the Earth to the Sun, 51 times will get you from the Earth to the Sun and back again. That's the power of doubling. Now, that's a simple party trick, but if we transfer that to ourselves, to our own lives, we get to this concept of 6 degrees of separation, which I'm sure most, if not all of you, have come across. And that's based on this simple idea. If I said to you, how many people do you know? It's hard to measure, but on average, probably most of us know around 1,000 people. If you include the person in the supermarket, the newsagent, people you know well, people you don't know that well. If you multiply 1,000 by 1,000 by 1,000 6 times, you get to more people than there are in the entire world. I've tried that on a spreadsheet too, it also works. In other words, 6 degrees of separation means I can get to almost anybody I want to through 6 contacts. The truth, of course, is that we tend to use and need less than 6 contacts. But the concept is not the number 6. The idea is that we are more connected than we realize we are. So it's really important to think laterally, to chat with strangers, with people you don't know, without worrying about where exactly it might lead. You never know who knows whom or who could introduce you to whom. Tip number 3, value acquaintances as well as friends. Of course, I'm not saying that friends aren't important. We all know how crucial they are to our lives and how our lives are going to develop and our careers. But what we tend to say is, oh, John, I've only met him once, he's not really very important. And that's a big mistake, because in the end, well, let me put it like this. Think of your friends, say, in your work, where you're working at the moment. Probably they're a bit like you. Without being too negative, you're sort of like an anthill. You're similar people with similar information. Whereas the acquaintances are people further away from you, in a different company, a different city, a different industry, however, wherever you draw that boundary. And the chances are they know stuff you don't know, so they can take you places you can't get to by yourself. Put simply, an anthill versus a Noah's Ark. And what that means is, as I said, the overlap between networks when they're strong ties are usually, it's quite a lot of overlap, there's a lot of redundancy. Whereas with the weak ties, there is much less redundancy. So weak ties, as I said here, reach more people across wider distances, and as a result, how many people you know can be as important as who you know. So numbers do matter. Tip number 4, connect people, bring them together. You've heard of the expression giver's gain. Well, in a sense, this is what I'm talking about. The natural shortcuts. When you start to look at networks, you find that we are not all equally connected. And what is most apparent is that some of us have got a lot more contacts than others. Now, we can all work at gaining more contacts, but some of us do it, some people do it almost naturally. And it's important to recognize those people, to recognize, it's not again a very flattering phrase, but the lumpy porridge, the lumps in the porridge, they are the ones that hold the network together. So it's important to recognize those people and to be more of a lump yourself, to make more connections yourself, to introduce people to each other. Tip number 5, giving can be better than getting. One of the things I'm most often told is that people find networking difficult. They find it uncomfortable. They feel it's manipulative, it's self-seeking. Well, if you approach it with this attitude, things become an awful lot more comfortable. I've got lots of stories I could tell you. Let me tell you just one. I was giving a conference presentation and a young man came up to talk to me afterwards, and he was saying he very much liked this idea of giver's gain. And he told me the story of how he still does run, in fact, a travel agency which specialized in the Baltic states. And he was sitting, I think, on a plane, but I don't remember exactly. And he was chatting to the man next to him. He said he always tried to make a point of talking to the people he came into contact with. And this guy was German and was going to, again, I don't remember which country, Latvia or Lithuania. So Vlad, the guy I was talking to, gave him some good travel advice about where to go, what to do. And it just so turned out, of course, that a few months later, this German guy happened not to be going actually on holiday, but be going to set up some sort of a business, and ended up giving Vlad a huge travel contract. So, you know, sometimes it comes very neatly around that you give someone, you give some advice, you give some suggestions, and it comes straight back. In real life, it sometimes takes a little longer, but, you know, I want to tell you a nice, neat story. So with apologies to JFK, John F. Kennedy, don't think only about what your network can do for you. Think about what you can do for your network. It's in a much more comfortable place to be in. Tip number 6, be interested as well as interesting. We all talk about elevator pitches, about self-presentation, all of which is very important, of course. But what we often forget is actually what we need to do is be interested in the person we're talking to find that, if ideally, that sweet spot where the two of you connect. It's a known fact that if you ask people about themselves, they'll like you. They'll think you're intelligent. So you have to be interested as well as interesting. Tip number 7, nurture your network. Networks don't just happen, they take a lot of hard work. So it's really important to put that effort into both meeting people and staying in touch with them. And really, you know, for staying in touch, any excuse. Key dates, congratulations, telling them what's happening to you, making introductions, we've already talked about, asking for advice. People love giving advice. Myriad of ways to stay in touch with people and keep those connections going. Tip number 8, practice makes perfect. I do a lot of work with undergraduates and MBA students, and very often what they say to me is, I find networking really difficult. I find it very difficult to open conversations with people I don't know. And one of the things I always say is, try it in the post office queue, try it in the supermarket. Have a practice where it doesn't matter. If you make a complete fool of yourself, so what? So that when that important conversation starts, you'll feel more comfortable. Practice really does make perfect. A quote from Herminia Ibarra, who is a professor at business school, London Business School, and a specialist in career development, career transition. We have seen over and over again that people who work at networking can learn not only how to do it well, but also how to enjoy it. And they tend to be more successful in their careers. Says it all, I think. Tip number 9, very appropriate, I think, at the moment when life is difficult for all of us. One of my favorite sayings, if you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always got. So if you want something different, you have to do something different, particularly now with the issues we're facing. A few solutions about ways you can be more flexible. It's clearly difficult to get out and about to meet people in the flesh. So do what you can online. Join online forums, discussion groups, events, webinars, whatever you can find that relates to your world or to your aspirations. And don't forget your existing network. Think about, obviously, the people you know well, but think also about the people you're weak ties, people you don't know so well, people you haven't spoken to for a while. And don't forget, LinkedIn has a wonderful facility where if you are connected to someone, you can see who they know. So you can ask for introductions. And thirdly, I would just say plan for the future. It will be different. Things will go back to normal. And last, but definitely not least, make your own luck. Richard Wiseman is a professor of psychology, and he was studying people who think they're lucky. And what he found was really interesting. First of all, lucky people put themselves in the path of good luck. If you never buy a lottery ticket, you'll never be lucky enough to win the lottery. Obvious, but true. Secondly, people who are lucky have a positive attitude. They see the glass as half full. A room full of strangers, a webinar full of people you don't know is an opportunity, not a threat. But what interested me particularly was that the lucky people all had active, vibrant networks. We all know the song, you'll get by with a little help from your friends, or I'll get by with a little help from my friends. That's all I'm saying. We need our friends, we need our networks if we're going to succeed. So it's been a bit of a gallop. I hope I've given you some food for thought at least. If you'd like to know more about the research behind some of this, if you'd like to explore ideas of networking, approaches to networking in more depth, then I'd be delighted if you wanted to join us. We're planning a longer, full-scale webinar, I think later this month, and it'd be great to see you there. So, thank you all very much.